You don't need a bunch of photos. If it's a 3,000 square foot house, 10 to 12 photos is fine. Unless the closet has an island in it, don't put a photo of it. Of half baths, no way.
Yeah.
Or am I putting a photo of that?
Don't try to hide anything in the process of selling a home because it will be found. You're not going to pass anything through. There's a potential legal outcome if you do pass it through and they find out about it later.
Everybody closes on Friday. If you close on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're probably going to be the only closing that day, and it's going to go smooth.
Don't let your ego and pride get in the way and cost you more money in the long run, which is a lot of times what happens when people get stubborn.
Yeah,
is they end up losing more money in the long run. Okay, we're going to continue with the next video in our series about creating a stress-free home sale. We did basically step-by-step lender, how the lending process works. We've done a step-by-step on buying or having a stress-free home purchase. Now we're going to talk about a stress-free home sale. Please take the time to like, subscribe to our channel. Okay, so let's jump right in here. And by the way, if you're a real estate agent listening to this, this is designed for you to be able to communicate with your clients on how this process works. And so maybe this could be a video that you share with them at some point. But let's jump right into pricing and how to price a home appropriately when you are getting ready to sell a home. And this is where the sticking point is between real estate agents and between sellers. And typically what I will tell you, as a seller, you typically have a number in mind that's higher than the actual number that your house is going to sell for. And the reason that is, it's very simple, because you're grabbing sort of anecdotal evidence from people that are in the neighborhoods. Like, oh, did you see Bill sold his house for X amount? Which maybe he did, maybe he didn't.
Yeah.
Or, Jimmy, he sold his house for this. And, so you're grabbing kind of these stories. And once we sort of break that down into comps and evidence, typically it's not representative of what's actually happening.
Yeah. Anytime that you're using statistics, and you're going to use them to fit your narrative. Right. So if you want your house to be worth $1 million, you're going to go out and find every reason why it should be worth $1 million.
Right.
Maybe it's worth $950, but you're going to try to make sure that the agent buys into it's worth $1 million. Agents, you can try to convince your client to list at a certain price point. Ultimately, the decision's up to them, but you just have to do the best you can to provide as much information so they can make an informed decision. That's your job here.
Yeah, typically what I'm doing is just providing the data, right? And highlighting highlighting the houses that are sort of closest to their house in terms of, size and things like that. Because, a lot of times people, are not considering, okay, well, Jimmy's house is, 1,000 square feet better than mine, bigger than mine, or whatever the case may be. So
I'm actually working with a client right now, and we're kind of at a sticking point on list price. I think we should list at X, and he thinks we should list, higher than that. And I've provided all the evidence I can provide, and he is just not willing to come down to the list price that I think is the most reasonable. The reasoning he is using is that, well, this house sold for this or this house sold for that. They're all brand new though. His isn't. And, they're on bigger lots with bigger garages. Square footage is the same, but there's a lot that goes into some of that. And so, sometimes you don't win them all. But what we did agree is, and we've done this a lot, is the showings and offers.
Yeah.
We did agree that if we're not getting 10 showings in the first 3 weeks, that we're going to drop the price. So getting some sort of agreement about how it proceeds from here is also important, even if you don't nail the list price just based on your conversation.
Yeah, and that's a really good segue, is basically to understand this game here, how house sales work, is you've got basically two factors, right? And that's price and condition. Okay, when price and condition meet, the house is going to sell. Now, we can move the condition up or we can move the price down. But most of the time what we're dealing with is price. The way that we evaluate where a house is, if a house is priced correctly, is by feedback that the marketplace is giving us. And the feedback comes in two ways. One of them is showings and the other one is offers. And we should get one offer for every 10 showings. Okay. So days on market again. So if it's like, if the average days on market in the neighborhood is 14 days, that means we need to get 10 showings and 1 offer in that 14 days. And if we start first week and we got 2 showings, we got a problem.
Yeah.
Right. Because we should be getting 7 showings that first week.
That's right.
So that's how we sort of evaluate as we go, all right, so if the days on the market is 30 days and average days on market is 30 days, we need those 10 showings and 1 offer to happen in 30 days. And if we get no showings the first week, we know we're overpriced.
That's right.
So you just have to understand how that game works and how the market gives feedback. And the danger for clients is when they overprice their home, they collect days on market, and that can be the kiss of death to a listing, because what buyers think is they're going out there and they're reviewing inventory and they see a house that's been sitting on the market for 14 days and other houses that are selling in 2 to 3 days. The first thing that buyers think is what's wrong with it, and they'll start looking for what's wrong versus looking for what's right.
That's right.
And I've seen houses that have sold for so much less than they should have because the client didn't price right in the first place.
Yeah, and when you go and you log in and you see it's been on the market for 45 days and it's had 3 price drops, it's the same thing. It's just like, what is going on with this house? Why is it not selling? And you're right. The minute they walk in, the husband and wife are like, or whomever's shopping for the house is like, all right, what's wrong? Like, what's the issue here? What's out of place? Instead of, I can see my family here. Let's make an offer.
Right. The other thing in evaluating like where your house is going to be priced at is being honest about the condition of your home. Okay. So, it's kind of like we talk about this like Kelley Blue Book. If you've ever tried to get the value in your car, it's like excellent condition versus, poor condition, right? So you've got a spectrum there. And like 2% of cars fit in that excellent condition, because most people are living in their cars. They probably eat in their car, right? They're probably not getting it cleaned. They may or may not keep it in the garage. There are sort of a lot of factors that are going to determine the condition of that car. Same thing with a house, right? How you live in a house, what you stayed on top of. And basically those people who have houses in excellent condition are the people that like, hey, if a door handle sticks, they've got a handyman that comes like every month and checks on things, and they repainted it every 2 years. It's like that kind of like home care is what's going to put a house in excellent condition. But most people are just generally just living, working, have kids in their house. And so it's going to fall in that good to average category.
Yeah. I mean, my wife paints our baseboards once a quarter, and I still don't consider ours to be in excellent condition.
Yeah. Right.
It's like that. And she's doing projects all the time. She's repainting walls that she's got scuffed up, or she's doing stuff to the floors, and ours is still not in excellent condition. Excellent condition basically doesn't exist unless the home was just completed.
Right.
And there might be excellent within the realm of how old that house is.
Yeah.
And that's where you need to focus is like, all right, of homes that were built 10 years ago, where does mine fall?
Yeah. Most clients, though, they think they're like, oh, I have the best house in the neighborhood. And again, that's one of those sort of like bias things where you're like, I'm collecting evidence to say why my house is the best in the neighborhood. And it's like, look, if we're looking objectively here at data and condition of homes, you're going to fit in typically between average to good. You might fit in that good to excellent category if you were just like a slave to your house and you hardly live in it. But generally, you're going to fall somewhere in that average to good category. Yeah. Okay. The second thing we want to talk about is disclosures and what you should disclose. And you want to err on the side of, hey, this air conditioner was replaced, or if you've got an issue with the home, it's better to disclose it, and it's honestly better to fix it before you go to market. But don't try to hide anything in the process of selling a home, because it will be found. You're not going to pass anything through.
Yeah.
Right. So people are going to know, right, during the inspection process, they're going to see, and there's a potential legal outcome if you do pass it through and they find out about it later. So it's just better to say, hey, I got this fixed. Now there are differences, like there's major system fixes, roofs being replaced, things like that. You definitely want to disclose. What was the one?
Yeah, the sinkhole. Yeah, so they just didn't disclose it. Then they sent us the plat, which had the sinkhole on it.
Right.
And then, then it looks like they're trying to hide something. Even if you fixed it, why didn't you just disclose it? Because if you don't disclose it and we find it, then I'm questioning, all right, what was the motivation for hiding it in the first place?
Sure. So always go ahead and disclose. And then, generally speaking, if you've got a major item that needs to be fixed, it's going to come up. So it's better to get ahead of it. And if you can't afford to make the repair right now, let's say it's a massive repair, a whole air conditioner needs to be replaced or something like that. It's like, hey, I don't want to spend this money right now. You need to be prepared for that, or at least get a bid on how much that's going to cost. And then we can maybe work it out in the deal. But it's better to create some clarity about what's going on with the home versus, everybody's trying to have to figure it out because, a buyer is going to come in there and going to be like, well, that's, they always like double the price of whatever the repair is.
Yep.
Right. If carpets need to be replaced, they want to double the price of it, because they're coming in with a lot of emotion. And as a seller, you have a lot of emotion too. Okay. The next thing that we want to talk about is marketing the home. And, when you get agents and they're kind of, they come in and they go, okay, I'm going to do all of this marketing. I'm going to get you on all of these websites. I'm going to get, this, that, the other. Okay. First of all, most agents are going to do pretty similar marketing. 95% of selling your house is pricing it correctly, getting great pictures, and putting it on the MLS. Okay. That's it. So anything else within that sort of like 5% is nominal in terms of impact that it's going to take. Like, so if somebody says, well, I'm going to put it in such and such magazine. Okay, great. I got a house that I had listed recently. I had a full page ad for a listing. And I mean, I know as a real estate agent, I've been a real estate agent for 17 years now. I know as a real estate agent, that's mostly about marketing for me to the community. It's not about selling that house.
Yeah. Unless you just have a very, very unique property. Like I have a friend of the family that happens to have a pretty unique property in Franklin for sale. That might need some sort of additional marketing, but most of what we're talking about here, people find it on Zillow and people find it on the MLS, and then they reach out and it's priced appropriately and it looks good.
That's exactly. So don't get sort of bamboozled by someone saying, hey, I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna do that, and that's what's gonna make it better. Or I'm gonna, sometimes like I have had clients that get really specific, like, well, I want to market this home to California buyers. I'm like, no, you don't. You want to sell it to anybody.
Anybody who's willing to pay.
Anybody who's willing to pay what you're willing to ask. And so there's always these sort of like clients that sometimes, are trying to like work, a particular angle. And it's like, look, your job is to find the key demographic for this home, to market it to as many people as possible in that way. And so that way you can identify a buyer for it. That's it. I wanted to tell this story. I once had a client who was like, hey, he had obviously overpriced his house by $200,000. And I was like, look, you need to bring it down to such and such price. And it's in a premier neighborhood in Franklin. And he was like, and it was outdated. I mean, he needed to do remodels in the kitchen and in the main area and repaint and all these things. And he's like, what you need to be doing is bringing people in and showing them the vision for the property and, convincing them why this is the house for them versus another one. Because if they put $100,000 in this house, they're going to get $200,000 of value out of it, so on and so forth. Right. And this guy, again, had basically collected, what's it called? It's bias. Right. And so he was biased that his house was going to be worth so much more than the one down the street. It just doesn't work that way. It's in a suburban neighborhood, right? So you're not going to, yours isn't special, right?
No, and there's 3,000 homes in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So
right, exactly. So, again, but the other thing with marketing is photos. And a lot of times people can zero in on, hey, we need to get as many photos as possible. We actually disagree. Right? We need to get the right number of photos possible. Typically, it's going to be less than 20, probably less than 15, depending on the size, because our goal is to get people into the house, is to use those photos to get people into the house. So it's a little bit of a balance between mystery and, creating or setting the right stage for people to come to the house.
I'm about to list an 8,200 square foot house. And you know how many photos we have?
I'm going to say 20.
We have 16 photos that we're going live with.
I love it.
16 photos.
I love it.
You don't need a bunch of photos. If it's a 3,000 square foot house, 10 to 12 photos is fine. Mm-hmm. It's fine. And we always say this. We said it so many times. Unless the closet has an island in it, don't put a photo of it. Half baths, no way.
Yeah.
Or am I putting a photo of that? If it's just a small Jack and Jill, no photo. Like luxury bathrooms, okay, but like you need to be, you need to create some intrigue so that somebody comes in the house and then creates their own vision of buying the house, whether it's themselves by the Christmas tree or in the kitchen or whatever. Do not put so many photos that people nix the home before they've even had a chance to walk in the door.
Yeah, what sells houses is like kitchen, living area, master bedroom. Okay. And that's where we want to focus the majority of our marketing in terms of photographs. And then, kids' bedrooms, if they got toys in it, we don't need that.
Why would you put a photo of a 12 by 12 bedroom?
It doesn't make sense.
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a feature. It's not great. Like you're going to go in there and you're going to be like, this is kind of small, but we can make it work.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why would you put a photo of that?
Yeah, doesn't make sense. I guess the argument would be from people is like, well, we want to give them as much information as possible so that they can make a decision from home, but they're not going to make a decision from home.
No, and the analogy we always use is like, look, when a new car was released by Ford or GM or whomever, how many photos do you see? A couple, 3, 4 max. You see most of them of the outside and maybe one pointing forward in the car and one pointing back. That's it. No trunks, no cubbies, no any of that. And there's just no need for it because they want you to come in, they want you to drive the car, they want you to see how it rides, and then buy the car.
Yeah, it's like a $40,000 to $80,000 product, and we're selling, and that house is up $500,000, $1 million.
Yeah.
So, okay. The number 4, prepping the home, getting your house ready to sell, and the basic tenet you need to understand is that it is not your home anymore; it is a product. So a lot of people get wound up and like, oh, I put my own special touch. It's like, no, we sort of want to turn this into a product that has appeal to the most amount of people possible. Okay. And one of the misnomers again is like the right person is going to buy my house. No, we want the person who's willing to pay what you're asking to buy the house if you've priced it correctly. So we want to basically create that product with mass appeal. The way that we do that is through depersonalizing the home. Okay. So one of those things is decluttering, getting a lot of the clutter out of the house. Everybody's got stacks of papers somewhere and this and that. So we want to declutter that house. Okay. If there are like clothes in the closet, most of us have too many clothes in our closet, lots of clothes that we don't wear. You want to basically take half of them out because that shows that there's plenty of storage space and it's clean. You don't want people to open the door to a closet and be packed full of stuff, or walk into a garage and be packed full of stuff, because you can't. You're thinking there's not enough space.
Yep.
So you're communicating not enough storage space. Family pictures. This is one. It's like, well, why can't I leave my family pictures up? Here's what I've seen, and you can verify this probably. When people go into a house, and there's family pictures, that's the first place they go because they're trying to size up the seller.
Yep.
And they're going, who is this person? Do I know them?
Yeah.
Right? Why are they moving? And they start to try to get the story, so they're trying to work an angle.
Yep.
So take your family photos down. Okay. Landscaping, I find, has massive impact in terms of when people pull up your curb appeal to your house.
Curb appeal is very important.
Yeah. So curb appeal is huge. So basically getting that front of the house like really nice, ready to go, getting the front stoop clean, because a lot of people are going to be walking up waiting as the real estate agent is sort of fiddling with the lockbox. So making that space clean, that's sort of the handshake to your house.
And landscaping doesn't mean going to spend $30,000 to replace all the plants. It means making sure there's fresh mulch, making sure the beds are weeded, making sure the lawn's cut. Things like that go a long way for the buyer to know that you've kept up the house.
Yeah. All right. This next one is one that we get pushback on a lot, which is fresh paint and fresh carpet. And because it's a hassle and because it costs money.
Yep.
And I understand why people push back on it. But what we hear a lot is, well, I don't know what colors they want. I don't know what color of carpet they want. I don't know what color of paint they want. We'll let them pick it. We'll offer it as an allowance and just let them pick it. It's better to just, from a sellability perspective, from a marketability perspective, it's better to do those things, because if you don't, people are going to perceive the house. If you don't have a fresh coat of paint, or at least paint in really good shape, people will think the house is worn down and beat up.
Yeah.
That's their perception.
And if you offer an allowance, they're gonna be like, well, is that really enough? Like, are we gonna be able to replace all the carpet? You know, it's a rabbit hole.
Right. So, if your house, be honest, if your house needs fresh paint and fresh carpet, do it. Pick neutral colors. I mean, if you need some help, go to new construction and find out what colors they're using. They probably would let you take a picture of the paint can so can take it to Sherwin-Williams or Home Depot or wherever. But yeah, just go with neutral colors and get that thing clean, because I promise you, when people walk in, the cleaner it is, the more they fall in love, the better for you. Okay? You don't want them walking in and seeing a project. Okay? Old furniture or too much furniture, get it out. I've walked in houses that just have a ton of furniture and it's packed in there. I understand you're going to be uncomfortable for a period of time while you're selling your house, but you're going to be moving anyway. So, make sure that the furniture looks good and that it's not crammed. Again, you want to communicate that it's spacious. And then anything that's broken, any systems, just go ahead and get that stuff fixed prior to selling the home. Okay, you want to take the next one, remodel?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, more often than not, I'm not suggesting any remodels. One, you're not going to get the value back out of it.
Mm-hmm.
The remodel, so paint and carpet is one thing. Remodeling is quite another, as far as like, let's say you decide to do the kitchen, right? Well, you've got a lot of choices in a kitchen. You've got tile backsplashes, you've got, different, faucets, you've got, hoods for ovens and things like that you're not going to see the value back out of it if you make all these choices. You spend all this money and then, you go to list it the next day. That's typically not how it works, unless your home is way behind some of the other homes on the block as far as that goes. So if your kitchen is 10 years out of date from houses that have sold in the neighborhood, we may have a discussion there. I typically don't recommend remodels just to get a house sold. I don't know how you feel about it.
Well, here's what I think is the only reason you should do a remodel is for you, but
That's
not
right.
for the sale.
That's
because you are going to sell for less than the other houses in the area that may have remodeled kitchens or remodeled bathrooms. But the hassle involved in doing the remodel, having to live around the remodel, waiting on contractors that can completely mess up whatever timeline that you had in mind, because it never works. It never happens on time.
Yeah.
And just the inconvenience to your life, it's better to take the hit monetarily and then just move on with your life.
You said it very concisely, and that's a great way to put it, unless it's for you. Because when you go through a remodel, again, so many choices. And unless you plan to stay there for the next 5 years, most of the time it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Now, I think you had a story in one of our previous episodes where something simple, and I don't consider this a remodel, so let's not get carried away here, but you said all the doorknobs were brass, and you recommended just replacing the doorknobs, doing a few, I think you said a couple ceiling fans and whatnot. That level of project I think is fine.
Yes.
Because it can do a lot to not date a home to a certain time period. But extensive remodels, I always say no. And you also had another good point, contractors. They're always going to be late. So if you're trying to get the home on the market by a certain time.
That's true. Yeah, there are some, you're right, there are some sort of medium things. One of the, it's the flat doors, and replacing those with 6-panel doors can sometimes elevate a home. And I've done that on my own homes before. So it's things like that. But once we start to get into $20,000, $30,000 in remodeling, you're typically not going to, it's not worth it.
Even for those smaller projects like the doorknob thing, I would evaluate the homes that have sold in the neighborhood and see where we sit. Are we way behind, and are we okay accepting $10,000, $20,000 less? Or are there a couple small things we can do to kind of get it in the ballpark of some of these other homes that have recently sold?
Yeah. Okay, so the next would be just when we go live. And so why do we like Wednesday, Thursday?
Man, closing, title companies, everybody closes on Friday.
Yeah.
Everybody closes on Friday. Mm-hmm. If you close on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're probably going to be the only closing that day, and it's going to go smooth.
Right.
We say Wednesday or Thursday because we do understand that people need to take off work to close so they can move and do all these things. Yeah. So closing on a Monday is sometimes not super feasible, but honestly, any day but Friday is great.
Yeah,
because the title company isn't so backed up.
Yeah, and same thing for when we go live on the listing, right? So it's Wednesdays and Thursdays are when we want to go live, because it gives people the weekend to come look at your house, right? So that's when we want to go, again, it's like, because people are like typically, and we have a lot of people that might be coming in from out of town into Nashville to search for homes over the weekend for relocation or whatever. Most of you guys live in cities with the same thing. So that's the time that they have to go look. And so you want them to start building their list of houses they want to see. If you go live on Friday evening, there's a likelihood that they don't see it or that it doesn't make the cut. And so it's better to do it Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, I totally misread that one. I thought we were talking about closing. The live thing is...
I was trying to make it smooth.
It was a smooth transition. But yeah, no, totally go live. Like you said, people are coming in from out of town. They're building their list on Wednesday night. And that's the best time to go live.
Okay, so here's another one that may be a little bit of conflict, because we love to do open houses, but do you think open houses really sell the home?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Yeah.
They don't. I mean, the point's not to sell that home, and we've talked about that too many times, probably to rehash it here. But that's your marketplace. That's your storefront
for an agent. Yeah, but if we're talking to sellers, I mean, it's like we want to do those open houses for us, right? But for the seller, I think maybe can create some convenience to center showings over a weekend in a particular period in time. So it's like on a Sunday, like let's say you want your Sundays, like, okay, we can restrict showings from just 2 to 4 versus having them pace out throughout the part of the day. So there may be some benefit there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still going to ask the sellers if we can do an open house, but they don't sell that particular house.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think I don't think it's not helpful. I think it does showcase the home from a seller perspective. However, it's typically not where the home sale is going to happen.
It's not. And honestly, it does show the seller, though, that you're putting in the work.
Yeah.
Especially if you do a good job. Like we talk about door knocking across the street, inviting the neighbors, things like that to get some additional feedback. There's some value there to the seller. Like maybe somebody in the neighborhood tells you, something that you didn't realize on your own. So always some value. And again, it shows the sellers that you're willing to put in the work. But it's just that's almost always not going to be the source of your buyer.
Well, the other thing that I think about, like on the sell side or for open houses from a realtor, the benefit to the seller is if the realtor is doing a good job, what they should do is do some door knocking the day before. So 5 houses on each side, 10 across, knocking about 20 doors, inviting neighbors and letting also engaging the neighborhood in the sale of your home, because they may have a friend or family member, somebody that wants to come in and buy the house. So there is some benefit, but it's not typically where the home sale is going to happen.
No.
Okay. All right. And we want to talk about
days on market.
Days on market. Again, we talked about this a little bit, but like when we want to drop the price. Again, we typically have we want to look at average days on the market in the neighborhood and say, hey, we need 10 showings and 1 offer, and that average days on market. So we can typically dial in how many showings we need a week. And if we don't get that, then we need to drop the price. And I would say drop the price on Wednesdays, because a lot of times there can be some Monday and Tuesday negotiation, or somebody might bring an offer on Monday, after the weekend. So I'd like to do those. I like to do those on Wednesday. And then that way, again, it's ready for people who are coming into town that weekend.
Yeah, that example I shared earlier of we can't come to terms on a list price. We've already agreed to drop the price at week number 3 if we're not getting the showings that we need to have to get the home sold in the time we need to sell it, because we're actually under contract with the home sale contingency on another home. So we have some incentive to get the house sold. Our only data point is going to be showings.
Yeah.
If we're not getting them, adjust.
Right.
Or maybe you are getting them and you're getting consistent feedback that the price is too high, which is another reason that you can maybe, drop the price earlier.
Right. Okay, special situations. This is the part that causes, or the portion, this is where we get the most confusion from both real estate agents and sellers into what is actually valuable, and where we get into is like converted garages, basements, outbuildings, like somebody puts a shop
Pool
on their
house
property, pool house, guest homes, et cetera, et cetera. So this is, again, we get a lot of confusion, like what actually adds value and what doesn't add value. And so they go, well, can I just add this square footage in the basement, or can I add the square footage in the guest house? Here's what I'm going to tell you. It depends. We have to find properties similar that have sold in your neighborhood that are the same size and square footage. So again, if you've got a finished basement in a neighborhood that doesn't have finished basements, then your basement is not worth as much as you think it is. It's not just automatic square footage that's added.
Yeah, but if every home in the neighborhood has a basement and they're all roughly the same square footage, then it's dollar for dollar. Like it's just the square footage matches.
I think the Kansas City is a great example of this, because in Kansas City, there in a typical neighborhood, you're going to have finished basement houses and non-finished basement houses.
Yeah.
So that way you've got enough comps that it is added square footage. So there is value to finishing out your basement.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that in your neighborhood, you're taking a risk. Same thing with pools, all of that stuff. And so
my neighborhood has a lot of finished basements in it. And in our neighborhood, it's basically the same as above ground square footage. Like it's just equivalent, just because there's so many basements in the neighborhood, and our MLS allows a full basement square footage to be added to the MLS square footage listing. So it's basically dollar for dollar, but that wouldn't be true in every neighborhood.
Yeah. I would say like one of the things that just a converted garage, I think those things are almost worth nothing in terms of added square footage.
Yeah,
they mean nothing.
It's a very specific buyer that needs something. That's also something else. Like every family would love to send their kids down and play in a basement where they can't hear them above them. That's pretty. If you've got multiple kids, that would be really nice to have. But not everybody has a garage they want to go sit in that's air conditioned and totally finished out like an apartment. Like that's just very unique.
Yeah. So it just, again, it needs, what is going to make it valuable or not valuable is like what else is happening in the neighborhood, and is there anything that we can comp against? But if you're listening to this, you're like, hey, should I convert my garage and add the square footage to the house? No, it's not going to add square footage. Okay. When you go under contract on a home sale, let's say you get the offer and then you're negotiating back and forth. By the way, what I will tell you as a seller is your first offer is typically your best. Work that first offer up as high as you can go and take it and take the hit. Because again, we don't want days on market. We don't want days on market. So you really want to work that first offer. Even if it's a low ball, go ahead and counter it. We want to work it to see if it's workable. And usually that's the best offer you're going to get. Statistically, it's the best offer. Now, there are exceptions to that. A great real estate agent like RL or me can help you make that determination. However, don't let your ego and pride get in the way and cost you more money in the long run, which is a lot of times what happens when people get stubborn.
Yeah,
is they end up losing more money in the long run.
It's not 100% of the time, but really, really high percentage of the time that first offer is the best.
Yeah,
really high percent.
Yep. And depending on the market, you might need to be ready to give concessions and things like that.
And I would honestly, I don't care what the offer is. I would never just let it expire. I would always counter.
Yeah. And then once you kind of have you've gotten through the paperwork as the seller, there's not a whole lot to do except get it ready to move. But a lot of times people go, well, they have questions about the earnest money. Sellers have questions about the earnest money and how the earnest money works. And here's what I would tell you is earnest money is good faith money in terms of it being turned over to you. That typically is not going to happen until after the inspection period. And if the buyer financing falls through.
Yeah, even if financing falls through, they had a contingency. They're going to get their earnest money back. So, it's very rare. They would have to basically say, you know what, we're past contingencies. You know what, I've changed my mind. Yeah. I'm not coming.
Which has happened.
Yeah,
and technically you can go after them for more than the earnest money. So the earnest money is more sort of a symbol.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. That's a great way to put it. It's more of a symbol. I've had clients put down, more earnest money to try to win a deal. And I think that happens from time to time. They can still back out in their contingency period. So I'm not sure it really matters all that much.
Right.
I mean, it may, symbolize that you're a little bit more serious or that you have cash, but that's about it.
Yeah. And it just doesn't, again, it's like this is only after the inspection contingency is cleared, which is like, I've gotten through the inspections and we've negotiated how this is going to be handled. And then after the financing contingency is removed, which means everything worked out for them to buy that house. So in terms of like the financing, the DTI, underwriting, appraisal, all of those things, right? So all of those things happen. The only way that, and I think you've mentioned this before, the only way is like if somebody just goes, you know what, I just don't want it.
Yeah. And then it would go back. to the original person. But so here's what I would say is like, unless somebody's waived all contingencies and puts a really high dollar of earnest money, it's largely irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly. And then also we want to talk about just inspections as from a selling, as a seller, those inspections, by the way, there's going to be a laundry list of items that they're going to, convey to the buyer, no matter the condition of your home. They're always going to find something. That's their job, is to find lots of stuff. But largely what you want to do is, as much as you can, handle it with money versus you trying to make the repairs yourself, because you're going to want to just like be reasonable and fix these things for the least amount of money. And then the buyer is going to want you to do, fix it like they're going to live in the house for 100 years. So there's obviously like a back and forth there that's going to be a conflict.
The one other thing I think we should talk about, if you're done with inspections, is just how the NAR thing plays out in all this.
Right.
So I'm still going to personally recommend that my sellers, offer compensation to the buyer side.
No question.
It sounds like you are as well. I just think affordability where it is, and even if it wasn't, it's the smoothest way to operate throughout a transaction. Buyers don't have the extra cash to pay the 3%. It's already kind of works itself back out in the buy side if you're the seller. So my recommendation is to offer it.
Well,
to the buyer side
it's going to attract the most. If you're offering buy side compensation, my opinion is, if you're offering buy side compensation, it's going to attract the most amount of buyers and the most amount of real estate agents. Because if you say, hey, I'm not going to pay it, and then that buyer has to pay their real estate agent, you're potentially punishing your buyer for not offering that compensation.
Yeah.
So I think it's better to just go ahead and offer it, whether, somewhere between 2% and 3%, depending on the price of your home. So that way everybody's good, everybody's incentivized, and move it forward. And you also, there's realtors are professionals, okay? But you want them working hard to get your deal to come together because they're incentivized to do so.
There's a reason why cooperative compensation was introduced in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, you do not want a bunch of unrepresented buyers showing up to purchase your property.
Yeah.
You can't operate for both parties equally.
Right.
Like, it's just not possible. So while it's legal in our state to do so, you're going to have to reduce the amount of advice you're giving to each side, or negate the amount of advice you're giving to each side to make it fair.
Yep.
And then you're doing nobody a service.
Exactly.
So, I mean, not a great way to operate, in my opinion.
I think just continue to offer buyer's agent compensation to keep that, to keep your home sale stress-free and for you to sell your house for the most amount of money. Okay.
That's right.
The last thing that I would say is the absolute key to creating a stress-free home sale purchase is to get a professional real estate agent like RL or like myself, right? They can help you navigate all the individual steps, because this is complicated. There's some complexity to it. And it's better to have someone who does this all the time, that's on your side, that can create that smooth sale. And a great agent will make you more money than they cost you. And that's proven. A great agent will make you more money than they cost you, statistically proven.
Well, they should handle a lot of the stressors so you don't have to. Like,
that's right.
When you go through this process, you should be worrying about packing, moving,
right.
things like that. Continuing on with your job, all that. Like,
exactly.
Let us worry about the rest.
Exactly. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week.